At 1000 hours, the ocean looked ordinary, an endless sheet of blue under a thin, indifferent sun. From the surface, it might have been another calm morning, but 25,000 feet above the water, the picture was different. An HC-130J, Super Hercules had been on station since dawn, its advanced radar sweeping a 200-mile arc. At 0800, a contact was flagged. Speed inconsistent with fishing traffic, course away from shipping lanes, and no AIS signal. 3 anomalies and 3 reasons to pay attention. By 0945, the anomaly had become a line. A go-fast skimming the waves at 50 knots, running north-northeast. Under blue tarps in the boat's center lay cargo worth $42 million on the street. Split, paid, planned. For 5 men aboard, $2 million each meant a lifetime that could be erased. They thought routine and root and money would buy them invisibility. They were wrong. The Hercules sensor operator switched from radar to the high-definition electro-optical array and zoomed in. He could count 4 Mercury outboards, see the tarps, and make out figures moving on deck. The tactical coordinator relayed the feed through Link 16 to the cutter Kimball, the Joint Interagency Task Force, and DEA liaisons tracking cartel logistics. 200 meters per hour is meaningless to a cutter with a top speed half that of the go-fast. The math favored the aircraft. The Kimball was too slow to close the gap. But speed isn't just power, it's geometry. With fuel calculations, routing, and endurance factored in, the tactical team established a plan. Patience from the cutter and intercept from the air. The helicopter could reach the go-fast, disable it, and maintain overwatch until the Kimball arrived to take custody. The smugglers had plotted a route that depended on daylight and shallow water rendezvous, a standard playbook designed to exploit eyes that only watch the surface. At 1100, an MH-65E lifted off the Kimball's flight deck. Not the search and rescue Dolphin most people imagine. This airframe was fitted for interdiction. Reinforced mounts, a weapon suite, and systems tuned for tracking and engagement. Climbing to 3,000 feet for fuel efficiency, the crew scanned the white line the go-fast left in the water. A rooster tail stretching half a mile behind, like chalk across the ocean. Offshore, the runners believed in their pattern. Change course every 3 to 5 minutes to break surface interceptors' calculations. Above, the helicopter's 3-dimensional options made those tricks irrelevant. From 3 miles out, the MH-65E dropped to 500 feet and entered the compliance phase the Coast Guard's doctrine requires. The long-range acoustic device activated, projecting commands in both English and Spanish at levels that could be heard over engine and wave noise. Stop your vessel. Prepare for boarding. This is the United States Coast Guard. The rotor wash turned the go-fast aft into a blinding spray. On deck, the smugglers kept the throttles pinned. Their choices were stark: surrender and nearly certain prosecution, or run and hope speed in shallow water saved them. They ran. 15 minutes of warnings, visual signals, and sirens produced zero compliance. The Kimball authorized warning fire. The MH-65E's M240B spat tracer rounds into the water ahead of the bow. Harsh punctuation intended to show capability without immediately ending the machine. Even then, the runners doubled down, engines screaming. 4 Mercury 300s howled at full RPM. The go-fast carved curves designed to confound surface interceptors, but a helicopter doesn't chase. It calculates and cuts. Hytron, the helicopter interdiction tactical squadron, is the unit you call when speed meets audacity. They train in the ocean's worst moods. Their gunners learn to synchronize breathing with rotors, to anticipate wave timing, to mount aim corrections for 3-axis motion. Most snipers work from stable platforms against static targets. Hytron gunners do not. Their world is motion, and they build their precision inside it. Warning shots failed. The gunner swapped the general-purpose belt for something surgical. A Barrett M107 chambered in .50 BMG. The intent was not to kill but to neutralize, specifically to stop engines, not people. Aluminum outboards do not behave like armored hulls. A well-placed anti-material round through a powerhead converts kinetic energy into mechanical failure. One shot, one engine. The logic is clinical. A boat with no engines is a crime scene that can be processed. A sunken boat is evidence destroyed. Engines are fragile, accessible targets that leave lives intact while disabling escape. The first .50 round found the starboard outer powerhead. Aluminum disintegrated into a spray of foil-thin fragments and oil. Horsepower evaporated and speed dropped from 50 to 38 knots almost instantly. Desperation turned to calculation on deck. The second round found the port outer, severing fuel lines and destroying the cooling pump. The go-fast began to wallow, aggressive maneuvering giving way to sluggish steering. The third round punched through the starboard inner unit, shredding gears and rupturing the drive. 12 knots, barely steerage. The final round detonated the remaining powerhead in a black cloud of metal and oil. Engines stopped. Silence like a curtain fell over the scene. The smugglers, 5 men who had bet their futures on speed and a pattern, sat amid tarps and expensive contraband and watched the helicopter hold overwatch. The math that had favored them evaporated. Now the geometry favored the law. Kimball launched 2 7-meter rigid inflatable boats. Each rib screamed across the swell at 45 knots, carrying tactical law enforcement team South operators in level 4 armor with M4 carbines and non-lethal options. Their approach was textbook: a pincer to deny maneuver, precise spacing to mitigate swells, and rapid dismounts to establish control. The lead rib positioned for initial contact, while the second swept around for support. Commands cut through the wind. Spanish barked with unambiguous clarity. Manos arriba, no se mueva. Arrodíllense, hands up, knees down, compliance. The 5 men complied. It was anticlimactic in its finality. 5 pairs of hands raised, faces wet from spray, eyes wide with the realization that the run had ended, not with a single dramatic explosion, but with careful geometry, patient persistence, and a sequence of exact decisions. The tactical team secured the vessel, detained the suspects, and cataloged the cargo. The cutter's disposal team performed what interdiction often requires: destruction of the instrument of crime, accelerant across the deck, flare, and the go-fast burned. A slow, expensive funeral. Cameras watched the hull blacken and finally slip beneath the waves. Evidence sank without the smugglers' escape. Aftermath was procedural and unsentimental. The 5 suspects were read their rights, photographed, and transferred to the cutter for medical checks and processing. Evidence technicians cataloged tarps, serial numbers, and satellite timestamps. The burned go-fast drifted like a charred memory before sinking. Cameras recorded chain of custody from hull to hold evidence locker. Back at the Joint Operations Center, analysts mapped the Intercept into wider cartel networks. Pattern analysis that linked this run to prior movements, a mosaic of routes, motherships, and coastal rendezvous points. Prosecutors would later use those patterns as threads in cases that reached beyond the 5 detained men. This is not a story about spectacle. It is a story about systems. Radar, sensors, and endurance kept eyes on a target. Link 16 and interagency coordination turned observation into action. Helicopter speed and 3-dimensional maneuvering neutralized the advantage the smugglers thought they had. Heatron gunners turned physics into a tool and used it with restraint and precision. The Kimball's crew processed evidence in people with the measured care that moves prosecutions forward. The sea is an arena where luck often masquerades as skill. But for the men who run contraband, luck is not a plan. Planning is, training is, patience is. When those elements converge, the ocean's blue can become a ledger. Speed on one side, consequences on the other.